When you think of any of the biggest artists in the world, they all have one thing in common: a sound that's unique to them. For Drake, it's his dark Toronto sound. But what is it about this sound that's allowed him to stay on top for over a decade? We're gonna go over some of Drake's most important production secrets. I'm gonna show you how you can actually use these in your own songs to really level up your production. Pay close attention, and let's get started. Also, feel free to drop a like. First tip I'm gonna show you guys is extremely easy to do, but it makes like a massive impact on the sound. And there's a bunch of different ways you can use it, but this one is really the key to achieving that, dark kind of underwater sound. Let's say you have some keys playing, highlight it, do Control-Alt-C to convert it into an audio file. Follow these settings right here, and click Start. Click on that sound, right click, go to Edit an Audio Editor. Change this number right here. Typically recommend going between 2,000 to 5,000. The lower you go number wise, the darker it's going to sound. But if I want some really dark Drake stuff, I'll usually just start out at 2,000 right here. Then you're gonna click Resample, Tempo Sync, and click Accept here.
Dillon XO.
So as you heard there, it's a big difference. And the sound I used to create that chord progression is just from my bank Summer Nights, and it's called Luxor. Pretty much all of my banks are great for Drake type beats, as it's a big influence on my sound in general. Now some people might think that instead what you could do is just throw on some sort of EQ. However, if we add an EQ,
Dillon XO.
even if we cut off more of those high frequencies,
people usually assume that it's a low pass filter, and then I'm just rolling off all the top end. But for the most part, I'm actually degrading the sample rate. So I'm removing those frequencies from the top end. They're not even getting sampled in the first place. They don't even exist.
and this one you can use for change-ups, part of the chords throughout the beat, drums, vocals, etc. Really the possibilities for this are endless, and this trick is related to reversing sounds. Let's say you have a chord progression, and this sound is just called Toronto. It's from my bank Grailed, a sound that I specifically made because it made me think of like a Drake piano. And so all you're gonna do is get your chord progression, and ideally you want your chords extending all the way, or it could kind of throw things off a little bit. And all you do is press Alt-Y. It's gonna reverse everything and just have this selected right here, flip horizontally, click Accept, highlight your sound, right into an audio file, Control-Alt-C again, just click Start. And then from there, you're just going to click Reverse. And the reason we flipped the notes around in the beginning is just because we want everything to play in the same order as our original piano sample. And so you have a few options here. You can either just have it play like this, you can go in and resample it like we did earlier. Or you can also go in and stack it on top of the original piano sound. Now Now, one issue you might run into is if you don't pick a piano or some sort of plucky sound, then when you reverse it, it honestly might not sound very different. One thing you can do to kind of deal with that is all you have to do is go and right click on the audio file and go to automate volume. What you're going to want to do is, like, every chord that you create with the piano, move this like this right here and pull this down, and it's going to kind of give it that sweeping effect that you get when you reverse the sound. You just have to make sure you do that on every chord, or else it's going to sound really off. You'll just want to pull this out. If you have to do a different cut, right click right here and go to make unique, and then just pull it over like this. So subtle, but it gets the job done. The next trick that Drake uses is using vocal samples. And in the beats that Drake uses, vocals are used in a variety of different ways. But my favorite way is how vocals are used to create textures. It's really simple to do, and it really adds like a totally different dimension to your beat that you can't get with regular sounds. Just got some vocals from Arcade. Really doesn't matter where you get your vocals. A great thing to do in the beat would be to have the vocals playing at full blast like that, and then when you kind of want to change things up or maybe go into the verse, that's when you'd want to turn it into a texture. In order to do that, one of the easiest things you can do is add some sort of filter. So right here I'm just using Shaper Box. You can also automate this with like an EQ or something like that. Or if you wanted to, you could use the first sampling tip I showed earlier. You can create a texture doing that, but I just thought this was cool because it kind of makes it move a little bit. So now let me just show you what I mean by have the vocal playing and then have it turn into a texture for the verse. Now some other options you have for vocals is you can go and reverse them. It's great for change up. Also great for adding textures as well. You can also use them for like intros of the song and then switch into like a sampled kind of chopped up version of those vocals as well. But you know, let's get into the fourth and final tip for today. This is definitely a big aspect of a lot of Drake's like big records and stuff like that, and some of my favorite songs of his. This is a great way to keep your listener interested, engaged in your song, and for a lot of people this will end up being their favorite part of a song, and that is creating like a breakdown or a change up. Let me just play my change up right here, and then I'll show you guys how I made it. Really the key to your change ups or breakdowns is you need to switch between a bass line and an 808. It's very simple, but there is one thing you have to do, otherwise it's going to sound off and sound weird. So first thing you need to do for your bass line, I really just recommend putting it on all of the root notes of the chords. So that's what I did right here. And the bass line I'm using was just my black bass. This is a perfect bass for Drake type beats. As you guys just heard, it's like very deep and full sounding. And then for the 808, you obviously want to create, you know, more bounce. This is just the Toxic 808 from my bank Glitch. And all of these drum sounds are actually from that bank as well. But the one thing you have to do, you want to click on both your sounds and you want to make sure whatever the 808 is cut by, so in this case it's cut by 3, you want to make sure the bass is also cut by that. Otherwise what's going to happen is they're going to run into each other and it's going to sound very distorted when you kind of switch into the two versus it sounding like really clean and smooth. As by doing this, when the 808 plays, the bass is going to immediately cut off. And when the bass plays, the 808 is going to immediately cut off. So make sure you do this. Now, another key to kind of getting this like change up sound effect is just really the contrast. So listen right here. This has an additional sound. The vocals are playing at full tilt. But then when we drop into the drums, that vocal is removed, a bunch of new drum sounds are added, and then the synth sound is taken out, so there's a lot more space. So boom, that's a really easy way to add some sort of like a change up in your beat. If I want to flip this around and do some sort of a breakdown, kind of the same idea, you just want a good contrast. So right here, I have the reverse keys, and this is the version that wasn't resampled, so there's still some higher pitches in it. Then I've got the synth playing with the higher pitches, the 808 and all the drums, and then right here it's just going to switch into the reverse keys that have been resampled, and then the vocals are also going to filter out right here as well.